Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello learners, welcome to today's biology lesson, Form 3. My name is Stephen Kariungi and we continue with our topic of discussion, which is sexual reproduction in plants. So today we are going to discuss pollination. So the first thing that we ask ourselves is, what is the meaning of the term pollination? The term pollination comes from the word pollen. So that means that it involves pollen. So we can say that pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Pollen grains are produced in the anther and they need to be transferred to the stigma during pollination. So we can say that this is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Now, we have two types of pollination. Types of pollination. The first type of pollination, we refer to it as self-pollination. And self-pollination is whereby the transfer of pollen grains is from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or of another flower within the same plant. So basically in self-pollination, we don't move outside one plant. So it's either from one flower to another flower within the same plant or from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So we can say that this is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower within the same plant. So we are saying that self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower within the same plant. So basically, we don't move outside that particular plant. The other type of pollination is what we call cross-pollination. And this is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther. It has to be always from the anther to the stigma. Of another flower in another plant. So this one has to be in another plant, but of the same species. So basically, cross-pollination, there is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower in another plant, but that plant must be of the same species. So it has to be from this plant to another plant of the same species. So that is what we call cross-pollination. Now, in cross-pollination, we can say that there is mixing of genes, because one plant is not completely identical to the other. So in this case, there are some small variations that exist in terms of their genetic makeup. So in this case, we can say that cross-pollination leads to exchange of genetic material, which leads to variation. So this is one of the sources of variation, or this is one of the causes of variation. When there is mixing of genetic material between different plants of the same species, then that brings about what we call variation. Now, the other things I want us to discuss are the agents of pollination. Note the difference between the types of pollination and agents of pollination. The agents of pollination are the ones that aid the movement of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. These agents can either be animals, for instance, insects. Insects are the main animal agents of pollination. Or another agent of pollination can also be wind. So mainly there are those two. So two main agents of pollination are insects and wind. So we are going to look at what are the adaptations of insect-pollinated flowers. What are some of the features that they have so that the insects become the agents of pollination, to attract these insects so that they can come and help in the transfer of pollen grains. So we look at the adaptations of insect pollinated flowers. And those insect pollinated flowers, we also refer to them as entomophilous. Entomophilous flowers. We know that entomology is the study of insects. So for those flowers that are pollinated by insects, we refer to them as being entomophilous. Now, one of the features that you'll observe in these insect-pollinated flowers is that they usually have very large petals, very conspicuous. You can see them from a distance. And they are usually brightly colored. So you can say that one of the adaptations is that the petals are large, conspicuous, and brightly colored. To attract insects, which are the agents of pollination. So when they are large and conspicuous, the insects can easily see them from a distance. When they are brightly colored, the insects can also be able to see them from a distance. Number two is that they are usually scented. That is, have scent that attracts insects to them. So the insects are attracted also by the scent that is produced by these flowers. The other thing about the insect pollinated flowers is that they have small anthers that are located within the flower. They have small anthers that are located within the flower and produce a relatively lower number of pollen grains. So the number of pollen grains that are produced here, they are not so many because there is minimal wastage. There is minimal wastage. Also, we are saying that the anthers are small and located within the flower. So chances of these anthers losing the pollen grains are minimal. As for the pollen grains themselves, the pollen grains are large. They are relatively large and sticky. They are large and sticky to attach or to allow them attach on the insect's body. On the insect's body. So they are sticky so that they can attach onto the insect's legs. They can attach onto the insect's wings as they are being transferred from one point to the other. These insect pollinated flowers also have nectaries that produce nectar. And this nectar is the one that attracts insects. The nectar attracts insects to feed on them. Feed on them. So the nectaries produce nectar that attracts the insects. Number 3, these flowers are usually funnel-shaped. They are funnel-shaped, forming a landing platform. So that the insects can be able to land on them, forming a landing platform for the insects. So basically, those are some of the adaptations of the insect pollinated flowers, such as hibiscus and most of the commonly seen brightly colored flowers. So you've seen that the petals are large, conspicuous, and brightly colored to attract the insects. They are usually scented, or they have scent that also attracts the insects to them. They have small anthers located within the flower and produce a relatively lower number of pollen grains because there is minimal wastage. The pollen grains are large and sticky so that they can be able to attach on the insect's body when they are being transported. They have nectaries that produce nectar, and that nectar attracts the insects to feed on them. And finally, we've seen that their shape is funnel shaped, that is wider at the top and smaller at the base, and that is to form a landing platform for the insects during pollination. So we'll stop there for now, and then we look at an assignment on the same. So the first question, what is pollination? Second question, name the 2 types of pollination. And number 3, state and explain 5 adaptations of insect pollinated flowers. So we are going to stop there for today. Goodbye.